Hi, I'm Jo Jackson, host of Think Uncommon. As a performance architect, I've been working with high achievers for quite some time now, helping them to overcome some of the struggles that they have to step into the best version of themselves. For a lot of these people, they find that the adversity that they've gone through during their lifetime is what has driven them to exceptional output. And this is exactly what I wanted to capture in the Think Uncommon podcast. You see, the guests on this podcast will be wide and varied, just like life itself. You will see billionaires to the everyday guy down the street, to a 22-year-old that decided to beat David Goggins' pull-up record, all the way through to someone I just happened to meet that made sense to have them here. But they all have one consistent story, and that's the uncommon mindset. You see, these people haven't decided that enough is good enough. They haven't settled for mediocre. And instead, in a market flooded with sameness, these people have decided to stand up and be a signal to the noise that there is more. I must say, the first 6 guests that I've had on this podcast have been quite exceptional, and I'm very excited for you to see and hear their perspectives. And as you listen to them all, I'd love for you to take away a single thing, and that's practical application to you. How does what these people say relate to you? What can you take away each episode that can give you more, perhaps place you in a different mindset to open up doors that you would never have considered possible? Because the truth is this, every person that you look up to right now, they started from right where you are. See, we all have the same formwork. We all start from the same place. And it's what we choose to do with our lives that makes the difference to how we experience it. And that's exactly what this podcast is all about. I look forward to hearing your feedback. I love to hear your stories. Please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, because this is a message for everybody. You see, the difference between success and regret is simply this: a series of choices that you make every day. And whether you are in your 20s or your 60s, it's never too late to start applying some of what you learn and to think uncommon, to enjoy that inevitable success. Today's guest is Dr. Trunnis Goggins II, initially from Buffalo, New York. He is an educator, author, and consultant for small businesses and higher rated institutions. Trunnis has a podcast called The 4 Ps with over 100 episodes available to enjoy, an author of the book with the same name, and a collaborator of several other books of similar topics. A veteran of the United States Navy, a grandfather, and I'm pleased to announce a new devotee to the world of CrossFit. Welcome, Trunnis.
Thank you so much for having me, Joe. I really am honored to be on this program.
Thank you. Trunnis, you're one of our earlier guests to the Think Uncommon podcast, and I'm very pleased to be able to say that when I offered the opportunity for you to be on this podcast, you accepted it willingly. And that's one of the reasons why I think you and I get along so well, is we are very like-minded in what we do. But I don't want to talk about that just now. What I'd like to talk about is something that's immensely exciting for you. I saw on social media you standing in front of Times Square with photos of something that you're involved in. So congratulations, first of all. And I'd love to hear
Thank you.
all about your trip.
Thank you. In addition to the 4 Ps of You, the book that I write on my own, I have a series called The Stories of. And Stories of, these are stories, it's a series of books. 2 books come out a year. The first book that came out was Stories of Children Lost, and we'll talk about that a little later. I'm sure it's about there's one of the stories in there is about the loss of my daughter. And then the other book that came out last year in 2024 was Stories of Veterans. And then the first book that came out in 2025 is Stories of Friends and Family Lost. And then the last book of 2025 will be a book called Stories of Transgression and Recovery. Transgression and Recovery deals with addiction. Stories of Friends and Family Lost deals with grief, but it deals with friends and family. And then Stories of Veterans in Transition deals with U.S. veterans. Now, I know you're being in Australia. Veterans, when they get out of the military, they probably more than likely 98% of the stuff they experience the same type of transition going from military to civilian. It is a very difficult transition, and that book helps them through it. And then also we have Stories of Children Lost, which is deals with grief, but it deals with the loss of children and grief. These books are tied into nonprofits throughout the world. We're actually talking to a nonprofit in your home country of Australia right now for our book of transgression and recovery. And what happens with our books is we do sell the books, and parts of the proceeds from the books go to help them get their mission in helping others go through what they're going through. And that's what the books are all about. And I have very brave authors that tell their story, and these are some very raw stories that they tell. And so what we did in New York, and we had this celebration. The first three books of Stories of, all three of them hit number one. All three of them did. And so there was a celebration. My publisher sent us out to New York City, and we got to see our billboard in Times Square. And we had a couple of signing events and book events at some various bookstores and things like that while we were there. But it was kind of surreal because I saw my daughter and my father, which are in both the Lost books, are in lights in Times Square. And knowing both of them, all right, my father would have given anything to be in the lights in Times Square, and I'm sure that my daughter did too. And it was really it was a beautiful celebration, especially for those that came to see, and they got to see their loved one who they lost in Times Square. And the veterans got to be honored. All the U.S. veterans got to be honored in Times Square with their photos up there as well.
Wow. Wow. That's quite a give back that you do there.
Thank you.
That is, I like the way that you've decided to do something positive for people who are returning from service, as a second generation of grandparents who were both in the army. I hear stories about what it was like for them when they returned, and for what it was like for my mother when her father and mother returned from war, and the impact that it had when her dad reintegrated back into the family, and how difficult it was for him to then step back into civilian life after having served.
It is difficult. It's probably more difficult for those who actually served in combat. It is a very difficult, it's a horrible transition. All militaries, I know the Australian military does it as well. They spend years building the perfect soldier, sailor, airman. You guys call them airmen in Australia, right? Or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, okay. And then they give you like 3 weeks to make you a civilian again.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's your transition, and then you're gone. Have a good day. Here they give you some McDonald's and they let you go to work in civilian clothes for a couple of weeks, and then that's it. And then you think that, oh, we're going to make it out there, and that's not the case. And it is very much, there's a lot of financial help that, and I'm not talking like we need to give them money. I'm talking financial help in how to operate, you know,
Yeah.
the economic system when they get out of the military, because it's totally different. There's a lot provided to the soldiers and sailors that we do not think about when we get out. Also, that uniform means so much when it comes to purpose.
Yeah.
And when you're wearing it, you feel like you belong. You feel like you are something. And then one day you just wear a shirt like mine, and then, no
You're
one
just
knows who
there.
you are. No, thank you for your service. Nothing. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you
Mhm.
on that. I have two children, as you know, that attend Army Cadets, and I watched the transition, especially for my youngest child, when she shifts from the everyday, just a kid, into the uniform where she's actually got rank. And I see that transition in her where she slips from just an everyday teenager into someone that's in command. And I see how it impacts how she feels about herself and how she holds herself. And even my youngest, how he holds himself when he's wearing the uniform. It's a sense of purpose that's hard to explain unless you've actually worn something that makes sense to you like that.
Absolutely. I'm barely 5'8", but when I used to put my uniform on, I was easy 6'8", 6'9".
Yeah.
Easy. I stood a lot taller when that was on. I'm sure your kids do too.
Yeah, absolutely. That whole belonging to something greater has such a significant impact on how you show up in the world.
Absolutely.
And you're absolutely right. We do need to do more for our veterans. It's the same here in Australia. We don't give them really much at all with regards to transition. And I know a lot of veterans that are significantly suffering as a result of mental health issues from things that they have experienced from deployment, and the support that they need has not been there. You're quite right. We spend a lot of time building the ultimate soldier. And then once you've outlived your usefulness, it's thanks very much. Off you go back into the world. And I believe,
Absolutely.
as you do, that that's quite backwards.
It is.
Yeah, very much so. So I want to go back a little bit now and touch on some of perhaps the little more sensitive issues of your past. You've all already referred to Kayla, but if we were to look at the timeline of your life, you've experienced quite a few significant extremes. The upbringing that you had in your early years in Paradise Road was definitely not conventional. Your mum and your brother, with yourself, shifted very quickly into a different situation. And then you returned to live with your dad on your own. And then later on in life, you've had, as you've referred to, the tragic murder of Kayla. It would be really easy for a person who has experienced what you have experienced to find themselves in a point where they don't care anymore, that the world owes them, that everybody else is to blame, and that I'm just going to expect someone to make things better for me. But one of the things that I really love about you is your resilience and the fact that you haven't done that. But what I'd really like to know is, do you blame anyone in your deepest moments? Is there a time where you point your finger or you scream to the sky and blame anyone for what you have endured?
No. And I know that was a short answer, no. Um, we are all, my grandfather, my mother's father, said one day that you're just dealt a hand and you have to play that hand the best you can. And good card players can win with any hand they're dealt based on the decisions that they make with that hand.
Mhm.
That's the hand I was given. I was given a father how he is. I was given a mother how she is. There are great qualities that my father had. There are bad qualities, really bad qualities that my father had. But in the long run, there are some things that have happened to me that after my being raised, that if I didn't have that sense of reality, I may not have made it. And I know you talked briefly about my brother. That's the same thing with him. There are
Mm.
a lot of things that he has gone through where if he didn't have that sense of life, we knew, there's a lot of kids. We grew up in a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood in Buffalo, New York. It was the suburbs of Buffalo. We lived in a home that was very big. I mean, we could go in that home and we could go all day without seeing each other, not because we didn't want to, but because we didn't have to. Okay. I grew up, I always had my own room as a kid. He had his own room as a kid, growing up. It was all those things. We grew up in a neighborhood where, my dad had Rolls Royce, Mercedes Benz. We had Corvettes, we had all these things. Um, but the thing that we didn't have, we didn't have that privileged life, so to speak. Obviously, you said it was very unconventional. So when people grow up in a life where they're not, people who grow up in a life where there's not a lot of struggle, right? When struggle does hit them, they kind of panic because they're not used to it. My brother and I were brought up in a way that we knew that crap was going to hit the fan. We knew the day we walked out. I mean, we were 12, 13 years old, knowing that crap was gonna suck. So I don't blame anybody. I'm kind of, in a way, and I know this sounds weird. I'm kind of glad of the upbringing I had. I mean, I raised 9 children, and I love them very, very much, and we're very close. All of us are, and but I did tell them, there are certain things that I'm going to put you in situations. I'm going to allow you to go into situations where you're going to have to figure it out. And then after that situation's over, we'll have a debrief. And I watched my oldest son went through hell. I'm not going to really share it on here, but he went through, and a lot of the hell that he went through, he put himself in. He put himself in it. I talked to him yesterday, on my way back home from New York, and we were on the phone, and I'm listening to him now, and our debriefs are a lot different. They're not as tragic, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what you're going to do about this. They're like, okay, so what did you do? He had an issue that came up yesterday, and I said, well, let me call you right back, because I was driving through New York, New Jersey traffic. And if you ever drive in that, I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, the best way to lose your temper is to just drive through that, right? And I said, son, I'm going to call you back. So once I got out of that area, I gave him a call back. And when I called him back, I said, so what's going on? And he said, I figured it out. And it was the greatest thing that I heard, you know, to hear him say, I figured it out. And that's the way we were raised, at home, where we had to figure it out. So blaming somebody, no. And even wishing that I wish things were different. There are certain things I wanted to be different. I mean, but we didn't have the Brady Bunch family. We didn't even have the Cosby Show family. We had a jacked up family. Okay. But 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 on the same note, I mean, I look at my brother, I'm so proud of him. I'm
Mm.
very proud of what he's done. Me, 2 weeks after my daughter died, I was defending my dissertation for my PhD.
Mhm.
2 weeks.
Wow.
I watched my mother. My mother went from the situation she was in to doing what she's doing today. And it's a level of toughness where, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for that. I mean, granted, I would not put that on my kids. There are better ways to do it. There are a lot
Yeah.
better ways to do it. But yeah, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for that situation.
Mm. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that perspective, Trunnis, because we talk a lot on this podcast about thinking uncommon, and that's the foundation of this podcast even existing, because I believe that in order for us to shift where we're at, we need to be willing to look at things differently. And it's not that either of us would advocate the life that you endured as a youngster to be able to be the man that you are. And you said so yourself. There are other ways to go about achieving the same outcome. However,
Yeah.
we are dealt the cards that we're dealt. And perhaps, even though we don't like the cards, there is something in it for us that will give us something that we may otherwise not have received. So you wrote recently in a post, and I'm very mindful on this. It's been 10 years recently since the passing of your daughter Kayla. And I can't imagine what it's like to be the father of a child whose life is taken. But I did want to touch briefly on something that you noted in your social media post recently. And it's in relation to the handling of Kayla's passing and the subsequent investigation of the case about how she was taken. Now, I noticed in that you haven't been receiving what I would consider to be basic responses from the prosecutor's office in relation to investigating that case.
No, no. I'm going to go back to when that happened. When my daughter passed away, um, I get a call from the detective. like the very next morning, saying that they had an arrest made. They got this kid as a 14-year-old kid, and that did it, and or that I'm sorry, let me take that back. There was a 14-year-old kid that was arrested, and they said we're going to do this. We charged him with murder, and he's in court, and you'll get a call. You'll get a call from the prosecutor's office when there's a hearing. We definitely want you and his mother to and her and Kayla's mother to come. So my ex-wife. I was like, okay, great. So we're ready to go. I'm talking to my ex-wife saying, hey, we're supposed to go. Weeks went by, Joe. We didn't hear a daggone thing. Okay. Weeks went by. So I decided to call. And this was probably July. So my daughter died June 19th, and probably in the mid part of July, I call and say, hey, what's going on with this case? When is there a hearing? What's going on? Oh, we have a hearing on it was like the fall that Wednesday. Okay. So I call my ex-wife and say, did you hear anything? No. Well, there's a hearing on Wednesday. So we go into the courtroom, or you go into the courthouse or building. We go into the court building, and this prosecutor, a deputy prosecutor, comes out to us, says, are you Mr. and Mrs. Goggins? I said, yes, we are. Said, come into this room. We go into the room. Now, remember, weeks have gone by, not a call, not anything. We go into the room, and this guy, just as blunt as possible, says, hey, yeah. And he opens up this folder. Now, remember, we are not prepared. We have not talked to anybody other than the fact I call and find out there's a hearing. He opens up this folder and says, "Yeah, we're not going to get a murder case on this guy. The only thing we can get on him is possession of a weapon. That's it. That's all we can do. You guys, you guys can go home now." That was it. I said, "Is there going to be a hearing today?" He goes, "Yes." He goes, "I'm staying." I told him. I said, "I'm staying right here." I said, "We're going to watch this. I said, I'm going to watch this until its final completion. We're going to watch this." I go in, and the prosecutor says, "Oh, you can go home." No, you can go home. I said, I am a taxpayer. This is my courtroom, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to sit. So apparently, he couldn't stop me from going in there, right? Because I am, So he sees that I'm pretty upset, very upset. Instead of, now this is a kid sitting there that did break the law, all right? And I'm the one that I have two sheriff's deputies standing behind me. So I'm sitting in the courtroom, and there are two sheriff's deputies standing behind me. And they're standing behind me because, from what they said after the court case was over, we were afraid you were going to hurt him.
Wow.
So now I'm like, wow. So who are you defending? Are you defending the victim's family, or are you defending the suspect? And clearly, by the way that setting was, we knew where it was. A couple of cases later, they said they were going to get him. They said they had a charge to get him on something that would have been able to get him 7 years. And then pretty soon that fell apart. The last thing that I remember from the Marion County prosecutor was the prosecutor saying, we have nothing against this kid. He has to go. That's it. Okay. So I was stunned. And the kid, I'll never forget it. The kid looked at me and smirked. He had a smirk on his face that I'm going to tell you, Joe, the only thing that kept me from going to jail that day was the fact that I had other kids that I had to raise. If it was anything else, I would have been, I mean, seriously, the only thing standing in front of me and about 6 years in prison was the fact that I had to raise kids. And I'm not joking. So as we're walking out, I said, stop looking at me, kid. I said, don't look at me. Because he kept on looking at me. I said, don't look at me. And so his mother was there. And his mother said, leave my boy alone, and started getting ready to yell at me. And all I told the kid was not look at me. And the woman kept on talking to me, and I was walking away trying to get out of the courtroom, trying to get out of the court building. And I stopped. And this was in November of 2015. The reason why I know this, because you're going to hear this, this is a weird story. I looked at that woman. I said, you know what? I said, you run your mouth and you protect this kid. I said, I'm going to guarantee you your actions. I told this to the mother. I said, your actions for this kid and this kid's actions are going to get you killed. And I said that to the mother. I said, your actions and the actions of your child is going to get you killed. That was in November of 2016 or 2015. On October 30th, 2016, that woman was murdered
Mm.
because of actions of her son.
Wow.
And I knew it. I knew that was going to happen. And the thing is the murder, they were standing together, and that kid was too much of a coward. He could have helped and saved his mother, but his mother died because he ran from the shooting. He ran from the shooting away from his mother. The mother could not run fast enough, and she's the one that took the bullet. And that's what happened. So anyway, that was 2016. So here we are in 2025. I have not heard anything from the Marion County Prosecutor's Office about my daughter's case. The case does not even have an assigned prosecutor to it. The case doesn't even have an assigned detective to it. It is a ice cold case. Every time I call, every time I do anything, I don't hear anything. So what's I'm gonna do is, and now the thing is, I'm sitting there saying it's just me, and my family. That's not the case. Only I would say less than 60% of murder cases in Marion County get solved. So yes, there are tons of murderers walking the streets of Indianapolis. Tons of them. Maybe even serial killers, because they probably kill once, they got away with it, they'll kill again for whatever and get away with it. And so what I am doing is I'm actually going to be starting a monthly podcast that's going to be separate from everything else I'm doing to bring these families to light. These families who, like me, just have an inadequate, incompetent prosecutor's office that they are paying to defend them and maintain justice in the city of Indianapolis, Indiana. It's just not happening.
That's a lot. Even hearing that story, that is so much to take in. That the organization that you, first of all, don't ever expect to have any dealings with. In a typical person's life, the prosecutor's office is something that maybe you see on TV. Worst case scenario, you definitely don't have one-on-one contact with them. You definitely don't find yourself in a position whereby you're actually questioning them. And you surely don't find yourself in a position where you're in court and you're looking at the boy that it appears may have taken your daughter's life, and you're watching him walk out the door. And all that time you're there trying to hold yourself together, and the police, all they're concerned about is the fact that you might hurt the child. And while I can understand their concern from a legal perspective, the first thing I thought of when you're talking to me about something was holding you back is just this spiritual battle in the back of the realm that we can't see, with angels' wings literally just holding you back, going, no, 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 don't do this.
Oh, yeah.
There are bigger things planned for you, and we need you to not make this mistake right now.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Seriously, that was that. And it's funny that you bring this up, because that's what I heard the whole time.
Mm.
You have too much to lose. He has nothing to lose.
Yeah.
You will lose. I said, and it was like, you are going to totally destroy your family by any, you know, hasty action you take during this. Yeah.
Yeah. It brings us nicely into into what I wanted to talk about in relation to family. It's quite clear that family is one of your highest values. Anybody that knows you will be very, very quick to determine what your values are, because you're very congruent. You live them very, very clearly and consistently. And in this day and age, that's a little hard to come by, I'll admit. People who live their values and broadcast them so clearly that they're undeniable. Family's a big thing for you. Everything that I talk to you about, we come back to family in one way, shape, or the other very often. But I just want to touch in courage. So the story that you've just talked to tells me that even back then, 10 years ago, there was an indication that we have a problem with regards to courage. This young man found himself in that position from a lack of courage. He, as a result of the lack of courage, was in a position where his mother then lost her life. And then you stood there and you're demonstrating here today courage in a very different form by going out and advocating for people who have suffered as a result of what you might consider to be lack of skill, attention, care in regards to the prosecutor's office. What are your thoughts? I'm really interested to hear on courage with regards to men in the world and young boys in the world today.
Wow. That is a question that, all right, I speak of this a lot. Um, I'm trying to say this in the least harsh way possible. Okay, because I do have a we have a problem in Western society. And we have a major problem in Western society. We are so wrapped up in comfort that we sacrifice courage. Courage is probably the most uncomfortable place to be because courage can get you hurt. Courage can make you broke. Courage can make you lose things that you really want to hold on to. When you hear of people doing courageous things, there's a significant level of pain that comes with it. And that's the thing about, and I'm not just talking physical pain, I'm talking mental pain, I'm talking financial pain, I'm talking spiritual pain. Courage is very difficult. All the people that we see in history that, and I don't consider him a person because he is literally the Son of God, but Jesus, he showed courage, lots of it. He was willing to go ahead and hang on a cross and die for everyone. And he, if you ever read the story of that, he had about 12, 13 times during the time that he could have backed out. He could have backed out on it a million times and didn't do it. Here in the United States, we have Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King, all he had to do, he already had a doctorate, he had a good job. I went in Atlanta. The church that he is only 3 hours from my house. He was a good pastor. He had one of the largest churches in Atlanta. He didn't have to do what he did, but he had the courage to step out and do something that, again, courage, pain. He lost his life. Granted, here we are. We celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday here in the United States, and we get a day off and all this other stuff. He doesn't get a day off. He's dead. I mean, I hate to say that, but I mean, we are celebrating his courage. You watch so many people I mean, I'm bringing up people in history, but if you see people with courage, you always say, "Oh my gosh, she was so brave." And sometimes when we talk about courage, we do talk about it in past tense because it usually doesn't end very well for the person showing courage. But it is necessary. It is absolutely necessary to stand up. If you are willing to take that step, if you're willing to stand up, you can get what you deserve. One thing that David and I have in common, we love Sylvester Stallone, we love Rocky. But it's funny, you're going to tell our attitude, our personalities, because we were talking about this a couple weeks ago. Rocky is David's favorite, and I love Rocky, don't get me wrong. But my favorite is Sylvester Stallone in Tulsa King, right? And if you've never seen Tulsa King, you need to watch it. I love Tulsa King. And again, but both shows, he shows a lot of courage. He's willing to give up something. He's willing to stand up for what he believes in. He's willing to put himself in the face of danger.
Mm.
The problem with men today is they want it to be convenient. I was talking to this man um, maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, and he was complaining about. We were talking about working out, and he was like, "Well, it might be easy for you, but I getting up early in the morning. That's just something that I just don't want to do." I said, "But you're telling me that you're sick, telling me that you don't feel good. So you're willing to go ahead and sleep until 8:30 instead of just waking up at if you woke up at 7:30 and did 45 minutes, you would probably feel better than what you feel now. But it takes a step of courage. You have to get uncomfortable. You have to get outside that norm. We are told, I mean, we are even told today. I mean, I watch people, well, why did you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Well, yes, you do have to do that if you want your life to be better. Men really, they need to learn about courage. I think that our conveniences and our the things that we have here in nowadays, um, kind of take away from that courage. We don't have to do the rough and or we don't believe we have to do the rough and tumble anymore. And that's bad. I mean, I here in the United States, hockey, well, here in North America, I shouldn't say the United States because it's not, but here in North America, hockey is a very important, very popular sport. And they're taking things out of hockey now that used to be synonymous with hockey. I know you know about the hockey fights and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, now they're trying to take it out because it's too violent or it's too brutal. Um, I don't see it that way. There was a sense of honor. If you really look at the fighting in hockey, and if you really watch the sport, there's a sense of honor. A mutual friend of ours, Barnaby, showed got me onto AFL football, Australian rules football.
Yes.
And I sit there. It's very, I'll tell you right now, watching it on YouTube is the worst thing in the world because you're missing so much. And I know I am. But there is a sense of honor. I mean, that's a rough sport. You're playing, you're getting nailed, and you don't have any equipment on at all. And that shows me, I'm like, wow, that's a level of courage. There's a woman that plays rugby in New Zealand. Her name is Portia Woodman. You ever heard of her?
No, I haven't.
She plays for the Black Ferns,
Uh,
and you need to watch her. She is just, again, so strong. And you just watch her play like blood's coming from her face. But she's playing a sport that I mean, yeah, I'm like, wow, you're getting jacked up. And it's about courage, but I'm using a lot of physical, but there's also courage that you have to do mentally. There's courage that you have to do spiritually. You have to protect your family. Um, we had a situation here in Asheville, and I brought this up on a podcast a while ago. We had a situation in Asheville where I had two men, okay? One was an officer, and the other one was a father, and they were on the street at the exact same time. A man was driving his car and hit a deer. Okay, that happens very much in our neighborhood. We have a whole bunch of forest animals that live in our neighborhood. He hits a deer, and the deer was hit where it wasn't going to live, so they had to terminate the deer. So they call the cops out. And so I'm standing out there and being I'm 54, so I'm that neighbor now, right? What's going on out here? That
What's
guy, right?
happened?
Yeah, I'm that neighbor. So I go out there and I said, yeah, you got to call the cops. And then I knew that the deer was good. You don't want to waste the deer. So I said, does anybody know a butcher so they can come pick the deer up? So we call and get a butcher to come out there. Down the street, so here comes the cops. Down the street, there's a family that's walking their children or walking their child, pushing them. The mother's pushing the stroller. The man is walking behind the the stroller, okay? Slightly behind, not totally behind. The mother is walking up front with the child. So the mother's the lead person in this walk. The policeman pulls out his service weapon and goes to shoot the deer. Okay? Not a problem. All you got to do is shoot the deer in the head. You know exactly where to shoot it, and it's done, right? This cop pulls out his revolver, and I'm standing on the sidewalk, and I just happen to look down, and he shoots, right? I don't hear it. I mean, I hear the gun, but I don't see it, I should say. But I do see the family down the street. And the father hears the gunshots and turns around, not waiting. He doesn't walk in front of his wife and kid. He turns around and starts walking the other way, away from his family. So now me being the guy, like, dude, that is horrible. That is disgusting. And the wife has to take the stroller, and it's a very narrow sidewalk, and has to kind of maneuver without putting the kid in the street and try to maneuver around. I was stunned at that. That was stunning. But what got me even more, other than the fact that I was really mad about that, was the policeman fires another shot. And I'm like, why did you shoot? I mean, he should have been dead first kill, first shot. First of all, he's laying on the ground. It's an easy shot. Second of all, that's all it takes. The head of a deer is not that big.
Point blank range, it shouldn't be too hard.
No. He fires again. The deer is now just like having a hissy fit. And I said, sir, I said, do you know how to shoot this deer? I shot it twice. I mean, it's like now I said, this is animal cruelty. I told the cop, I said, this is animal cruelty. I said, you see, and I did. I actually, while the deer was kicking, I put my finger on the deer. Put your gun right here and shoot it. It will die.
Yeah.
And then I walked away, and he did it, and it stopped moving. And I'm like, and as I'm walking back home, I see two men, one that would literally turn his back on his family if this stuff got real, and the other one who's supposed to protect my community, who doesn't know how to properly take down an animal. And I'm like, I have no idea what this world is coming to. And it is. I do think that there's a level of courage, because courage brings, and I know we're talking about uncommon, but courage brings common sense. And that's the thing. It really does.
It's a scenario that I've seen play out multiple times over here in Australia. We see it a lot, and the biggest problem we have in Australia at the moment is what we call femicide, where women are being targeted by men. They're being killed by their male partners or their exes. Women are being targeted absolutely everywhere, and depending on what state you're in at the moment, it appears that the men are being protected when it gets to the justice system, so they're getting off lightly, or the cases just not being investigated as much as you would expect. It's a really big problem here in Australia. And when I talk to people about this problem as a woman in a country where this is happening, it becomes apparent that the foundations of what men should be represented as and should be taught to become have eroded so significantly that events like femicide exist, and events like what you've just described exist. The things that were once considered important and necessary seem to have shifted so significantly that now we have scenarios where a man who should know how to shoot a deer at point blank range to put it out of its misery can't get that right.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Even like changing a tire. This is about a year and a half ago. I saw a guy on his cell phone, and the woman was changing the tire.
Ah, ah.
He was leaning, and the worst thing about it is he was leaning against the car that was on a jack.
Mm.
And I'm like, so not only are you don't understand the physics of changing a tire, you're about ready to kill this woman.
Yeah.
And they were about the same age. So it wasn't mother son. It wasn't even. It may have been brother sister. However, I severely doubt it. the woman was changing the tire, and the guy was seriously on his cell phone. I don't know if he was reading how to change it. Maybe I caught it at the wrong time, but the optics were so wrong. I hope I caught it at the wrong time.
Let's
But
give that one the
yes,
benefit of the doubt just for the sake of
I
it.
have to. Yeah. Mhm.
Because this is definitely not about slamming men. But I do think that there's a
Mhm.
conversation that needs to take place around what's changed in relation to what's expected of men and also what's expected of women, and how dynamics have shifted quite significantly, and what we do about that. Because if we continue to not give this the attention it deserves, if we shelve it as something that's not necessarily as important as other things, then, as you know, this will continue to fester in the background, and this problem will continue to grow monumentally until you get a situation where it's so big no one knows how to tackle it.
Right. Absolutely.
Which brings me to family. So you and I have a similarity that you may not be aware of. I grew up in my family business as well. So I am also the youngest in my family. My family had a family business, and my dad was very regimented about how things happened. Wake up time was a certain time. We'd go and we'd work in the shop. We had to make sure that all of the groceries were filled on the shelves because we had a general store. We also had a fish and chip shop where we would sell all sorts of fun, healthy, hot food to people that came through. One of the biggest things that my father taught me, mind you, I was a very young child and I hated every moment of it. But one of the biggest things my father taught me was the importance of responsibility and continuity. So it was have a ritual, be disciplined, be responsible in that, and make sure you rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. That's the only way that you're going to get to where you want to get to. Now, as the youngest child, I got off with a lot. I was really quite little. My first memory is when I was 4 years old, trying to hold 3 milk cartons at once, and I could barely hold one. So I started off really little. But for you, I think it might have been significantly different because you're the oldest son. So what were
I'm
the
the oldest.
expectations on you being your dad's oldest son in Skateland, where this was all about his reputation, right? Everything that happened in this place was all about him. He's bringing in celebrities, and you're effectively a representation of him. So what
Yes.
were your
My name.
responsibilities?
Yeah, my name is his.
Yes.
So we have the same name, and my responsibility. My father told me years ago when I was probably like maybe 8, this is going to be yours.
Mhm.
And he pointed to the building. This is going to be yours. This is how you do it. Okay. And I did. We worked hard. We worked hard. I was 9, and I was working 40 hours a week at 9 years old. I
Oof.
mean, literally, we were breaking child labor laws. And now, not only was I working at 9, I was if I brought home a bad grade, and bad grade was a C. So if I brought home a 79 or below,
Mhm.
I'm getting tore up.
Mm.
Okay. I'm getting, you know, spankings, whatever you want to call it. But you did not bring home bad grades. You had to be perfect. So 80 and above,
Yep.
okay? And you're going to work every hour. You're not even going to go to sleep. That's all there is to it. When I was in high school, I would work seven at we had a we so I lived we lived in the suburbs, and the suburbs had a different school set schedule than the city. So there were certain days that the city did not have to go to the school, but suburbs did. So when the city did not have to go to school, my father would have what's called all night skates. And those skates would go from 7 to 7. Okay. 7 at night to 7 in the morning.
And
Okay.
that's just opening hours, right? This doesn't include, this is not the prep, and this is not close.
No, no, this is not. But now because I had to be at school at like 7:45, if we had a 7 to 7 skate, I did not have to clean because it took at least 30 minutes to get to from Skateland to where my school was. At least
Mhm.
30 minutes. So I didn't have to do that. But I had to, and I would have to stay up. So I'd be at school probably the morning before. So I'd get up at like what, 6 o'clock, and I'd have to go to school. So at 2:30, I'm still at school,
Mm.
and I was exhausted. I'd come home and just like crash out.
Mm.
Um, I did have to work very hard. My brother had to work very hard as well. It was all about the perfection, and it was all about what he wanted to do. My father, obviously, you knew from the book, my father was a womanizer as well. And
He did seem to like the
he
ladies.
he seemed to quite a bit, but he wanted me to be the same way.
How did you do
And
that?
you know, I'm not gonna sit there and say, oh my God, I hated it. No, I didn't. Actually, I loved it for a long time.
Well,
Okay.
at least you're being
But
real, right?
yeah, I'm gonna be honest, a teenage kid. I mean, and the worst thing about it is the women were coming to you. I didn't have to go anywhere. You know what I mean? They came to your place. And when I was a teenager, I loved it. And my father loved the fact that I loved it because I was literally becoming my father.
Yeah.
One girl, and I owe her so much. I mean it. I owe her so much. I'm not going to bring up her name because she ended up marrying somebody extremely famous. But she saved my life. She literally saved my life. And it was because I was dating her that she literally changed the trajectory of my life. Because I realized through her that there is a thing called true, genuine love.
Mm.
And you didn't have to go out and have like 12, 13, 14 different women around. Now, before I met this girl, I was like that. I would have girls in the same neighborhood and drop one off, pick the other one up, live right down the block. And I used to do that. And no kidding, it was horrible. Yes, I know you're laughing, but I was a bad kid, you know? But when I met this girl who and she really changed who I was as a person. Funny thing is she broke my heart in pieces.
Mhm.
But on the same note, I owe her so much. Because but it also put a wedge between my father and I, because my father did not want me to be that type of man.
Yeah.
Not at all. He didn't. Now I will say that I've been married a number of times, so even though I'm, one woman man, there are certain things I did not learn, you know, that I learned now, as I got way older. But yeah, it was bad, but it came from that business sense. It came from that. It came from the fact that, you get what you want, you do what you want, and you talk about all the celebrities and things like that. I mean,
Mm.
we lived right next door to Reggie McKenzie, who was a football player for the Buffalo Bills, and I used to be outside in my backyard and, not kidding, playing catch with OJ Simpson. I mean, we were throwing the football around. OJ Simpson. I would go and swim in Rick James's pool. I
Yeah.
mean, we had I mean, there were and it was so just like natural to us. Like, yeah, that's Rick James. Who cares? You know what I mean? Or yeah, that's OJ Simpson. Whatever. We're gonna go see him, hang out with him today. It broke my heart when he was accused of doing what he did. It really did. I mean, it hit me personally because I mean, this is a guy that was a family friend, and that kind of really it affected me horribly. As a matter of fact, for years that happened. But being in the family business, and it's funny when you say that, I did not know that about you, Joe. But I also know that children in a family business, they learn how to be uncommon. They learn how to think. They learn, even if they don't become entrepreneurs on their own by their own right, they have a thought process where they're going to get it done. They're going to make it happen because they don't know any other way but to just make it happen. And Joe, that is one thing that I know that we think quite a bit. But one thing I love about you, Joe, is you're going to get stuff done. and you're going to make it happen. And that's one thing I love about you. I know if I call you, and I know we talk offline, outside of podcast and this, that, and the other, but the reason why I just have a strong just connection with you is because it's like if you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. And there are very few people that I have friends, I have tons of friends, but there's that inner circle of friends that I have that are more like they're confidants, so to speak. And that's where I put you. And I now I know why, because you grew up in a way where, hey, you're gonna get your ass kicked today. Let's go, come on.
Pretty
And
much,
and
yeah.
that's yeah, and that's what it is.
It's it was funny that you mentioned the entrepreneurial spirit. I'd been in business for myself for a few years before I actually made the connection with oh my goodness, my dad was an entrepreneur. How did I not realize that? My dad ended up closing his business, selling it, and then going back into the corporate world and enjoying his time in that space. But for me, it was a case of I'd never made that connection because I'd not thought of them as similar because they were so vastly different. But it was when I started writing the book that I'm writing now, and I was starting to think of the influences that I'm having in my life. And all of these scenarios of my dad came up. Oh, when dad did this when I was 7, when dad did this when I was 12, when dad did this when I was 8. And suddenly it dawned on me that my father has had a huge influence in the person that I am right now. And a lot of the bricks of evidence that I hold dear in my life were created way back when I was a young child working in my family's business. Mind you, kicking and screaming the whole way. For us, our Sundays used to be with my 2 older siblings. We'd wake up on a Sunday morning and we had a fish and chip shop. So my dad used to get a sack of potatoes, and the job was to peel the sack of potatoes, to then make them into chips, to put them into water, to then pre-cook them so they would be ready. And then that was my mum's job throughout the course of the week because we were in school. But Sunday, you weren't going anywhere, doing anything until this was done. Now, I was a lot slower than my 2 older siblings. There's about 8 years between myself and my next sibling. So you can understand that I'm a little bit all over the shop as a kid. But I lost count of how many times either one of my sisters would say, sit down. None of us are leaving until this is done. And that was Sunday. Every week, religious like church, go in there and do the sack of potatoes. And that discipline that my father taught me was quite foundational for the person that I've become now, because I started off hating him for it. And then I learned that there was no benefit in hating him for making me do this. Regardless of how I felt about doing it, I was going to have to do it anyway. So whilst I never got to the point of loving it, I mean, really, who is? I did get to the point of tolerating it and accepting that, well, this is just the way it is. Let's just get it done. And that's really the foundation of what you've just referred to now, the fact that I look at things and just get them done, largely taking the emotion out of things and focusing on the outcome.
Absolutely. It's funny that you should say this. This is something that you never knew about me. My favorite meal.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I judge restaurants on this one meal: fish and chips.
Fish and chips. What's your favorite fish?
Favorite fish is haddock.
Haddock.
Mm-hmm. Second favorite is cod, because you can bake cod. It's so good.
Oh,
I
I
love
love cod.
whitefish.
Beautiful.
Yes, I love whitefish. So yes, haddock and cod.
I'm
And
quite
then I
fond
will
of
say this.
ling.
Pardon me?
Ling fish. I'm quite fond of that, but it's a little harder to
That's what
come
I
by.
do. I do like lean fish. And then I also love lobster. Now, there is a difference between your lobsters in Australia and ours.
Mm-hmm.
Your lobsters, and I don't know, it's because of the water texture or whatever, your lobsters are more dense. So it's a
Okay.
heavier lobster. And it tastes, there is a different taste. Your lobster, Australian lobster is a lot more dense than American lobster.
Well, there you go. We'll have to make sure we treat you to some when you're here.
I think you do. There you go.
I will put that on the
After
agenda.
the CrossFit competition, we'll go ahead and eat, not before.
So I'm going to pause on the CrossFit competition to now. What I want to talk about is your service, the service that you had in the Navy. So you went into the Navy. your dad wasn't in service. Your dad wanted you to take over the family business. So how did that conversation go? Hey, Dad, by the way, I'm enlisting in the Navy.
Didn't go well at all. It went horrible. As a matter of fact, my father and I went, when I joined the Navy, we went 8 years without speaking. He did not like it at all. Um, Two reasons why he didn't like it. Number one is I didn't take over the family business.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Number two, my mother's father was career Air Force. So, in my father's eyes, I was following the footsteps of another man and not following the footsteps of him. It was a horrible affront to my father. That's not how he took it. And we didn't speak for 8 years. But I will say this, I wouldn't be where I am today without my father, and I also wouldn't be where I am today without the United States Navy.
So I want to talk a little bit
So,
about that. There are two
yeah.
things which really strike me about your time in the Navy. The first is your time as a recruiter. Now, I have an idea in my head that being a Navy recruiter is probably not the easiest job in the world.
Mm.
I'm curious to notice at the time that you were out recruiting for the Navy, were there any patterns that you saw way back then of young men and how they were showing up and what they were showing as that might serve as almost a catalyst or a warning for where we've ended up today?
I will say the people that I put into the Navy, the young men that I put into the Navy were the most bravest kids I've ever seen. Okay. There was one kid I put in the Navy. His mother made me put him in the Navy, and we don't have time to tell the story, but I literally recruited this kid out of jail. I went to the jail, picked him up, and put him in the United States Navy because of his mom. Okay. And this kid, I saw the kid, maybe I was out of the Navy by this time and I was in my late 40s. And this guy walked up to me and says, "Hey, are you Petty Officer Goggins?" I said, "I used to be." And he said, "I'm so and so." And he goes, "I'm Chief so and so." I'm like, "You what?" And it stunned me because I knew what this kid went through. There were people who wanted to join the Navy, and I don't know about the Australian benefits. We have a lot of benefits of you going into the military. And there were kids that wanted to join the military just for the benefits. And those are the kids that didn't make it. And also, when towards the end of my career, to answer your question bluntly, there was a massive shift. But instead of the military now under the new administration, and not trying to get political, we're now reverting back to, but we literally weakened the military to accommodate the change in culture.
That has
And I
happened
don't
as well.
Okay, and I don't want to use the word, I'm using the word weakened and I shouldn't, but we changed the culture of the Navy and the military to accommodate what we had. I mean, we even had during boot camp. I mean, I remember in boot camp, I used to get like lit up. Okay. It was like they're in your face, they lighten you up. And now they have a stress card. So if somebody's yelling at you, let me see if I can pull. Yeah, I'll just get this.
Stress
So if
cup.
somebody's yelling at you, yes. So here you are. Let's say you're yelling at me. You're yelling, 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 and I go like this. That means you have to shut up instantly.
No.
Yes. So I just threw the card up and you're done. Done. Okay. That is now gone. As a matter of fact, my son, bless his heart, he is in the Navy now. And
Yes.
that is the most arrogant son of a bitch on the planet. And he's my son, and he is
I,
just totally arrogant.
I love him
And
deeply, but he's arrogant.
pardon me?
I'm his dad. I love him deeply, but he's arrogant.
Oh yeah, I love him to death. And I'm going to tell you, when that phone rang and he called me, I was the happy. That made my Sunday. I was happier than anything in the world. On my way to New York, and I get a phone call from my son, and that just gave me enough energy to drive not only from here to New York. I could have driven to Mars. I was that happy that he called. But obviously, the culture has changed back to where it used to be. But again, we were changing our culture to a different type of man.
Mm.
And that was going to literally, we were going, I mean, and as you look at it, if you look at, and again, not trying to get political, but that's just the way it is. Our biggest adversary here in the United States is China. Okay, that's our number one adversary. And they are building an elite fighting force, and we are sitting there with stress cards. Who wins that?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
And so I'm glad that we are, again, not trying to get political, but I'm glad that the culture is changing. I mean, I'm not trying to sit there, oh, no, I want to make sure that this country stays here for a long time.
Yeah.
And in order for us to do it, you have to have a level of, you do have to have a level of discipline. You have to have a level of toughness. And going back to what we were talking about before, you have to have a large amount of courage to do what you're going to be called to do at some time in your life.
Do you think courage can be taught?
Yes. I think it could be taught as long as the teacher does not enable. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If the teacher enables, courage cannot be taught. Courage can be taught because now I'm going to tell you, weakness can also be taught.
Mm.
Okay. So both of them can be taught. I mean, I look at you. You just told me your story about your family. You told me you're going to have to get up and you're going to peel potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I know you probably have carpal tunnel and everything else peeling those stupid potatoes, right? But you do it. And now, just because you were, what, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old peeling potatoes, look at what you're willing to do today. You have two outstanding kids. You're doing it all on your own. You're running a business. You're working. You have a podcast. You're doing all of these things. You are doing great things. Why? Because you were taught courage, yes, in the sense of peeling potatoes. So you peel potatoes. No, it's not just the peeling potatoes. It's the getting up early. It's the sacrificing, playing well, at that time Atari, and going out and doing something and being told by an older sister, we are getting this done. No one told you during that time that, oh, you're tired. I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead and you just go do something else. You're fine. You go do something. No one told you that. They're like, you're doing this. So at some point in that process of, God, I hate this,
Mm.
and you're getting this done, little Joe Jackson said, I'm just going to have to suck it up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what courage is when you get to the point where you're like, I'm just going to have to suck this up and see it through. That's courage. When you sit there and you're like, man, there are times when you jump out. There are a number of times I jump out and do something, like with all these books and with working with all this. I sat there and said, okay, I'm gonna have to go out there and do it.
Mm.
And now I'm committed. I
Yeah.
can't turn away now. I can't turn back. There's an individual, Hernando Cortez, during you ever hear of Hernando Cortez?
Yes.
Okay. Hernando Cortez, I don't want to say he founded Mexico, it was already there, but when he wanted to take over the Aztecs, he had a crew of 300 sailors. This is in 1516 or something like that. 63 something. It was 15 something. And he told his sailors, so you cannot retreat.
Yeah.
Burn the ships. Burn them in the harbor. Just burn them.
Yeah.
And that's courage. Courage is when you put yourself in a situation where you're committed. And I think that, you know, the military, especially now, is trying to make sure that they're burning the ship, so to speak, to start that courage. And I think that's the way it's taught, because once you're in a situation where you cannot go back and the apron strings and everything else is cut off, that's the greatest thing in the world. You know, when kids know that they can always go back home,
Mm.
there's no courage. You know, when my dad said it's time for you to leave, that was it. I remember leaving that house, and I was 18 years old. I remember getting in my car and crying like a baby. You know, as bad as my situation was at times, I am now leaving a huge home, guaranteed food, and a great neighborhood. And I literally moved to a really bad section of Buffalo, and within a week saw my first rat in my apartment. And I had courage then, man. I still know how to kill. I could kill a rat with a broomstick. I can tell you that right now. You just take it, break it in half. I stabbed that thing. I really did. Scared the hell out of me. But I sure did. Yeah.
I still remember the day I left my family home. My father was the same. 18, you're out, 18, you're out, 18, you're out, 18, you're out. So not long after my 18th birthday, I was out. Find myself living with a man that I don't know because he had a place available, and that all of these things that I'd never had to experience suddenly are right in my face. And the first thing that I realized was, I don't know how to handle this. So I'm just going to do my best and muddy my way through it and hope and pray. And some of the best experiences that I've had personally have come from the worst experiences, where when you're in the midst of it, much like you sitting in your car crying your eyes out, it's, this is hell. I can't believe I'm here. This is wrong. This is unfair. I personally hate the word fair. This is unfair. Why does this have to happen to me? And because dad's kind of done the mother bird thing and gone, see ya, off you go, learn to fly. That's exactly what you've done. You've learned to fly.
Absolutely.
Imagine what it would be like. And personally, I think it's actually a detriment for men, especially, to go back and live with mum and dad.
Oh, yeah.
It's not helping the development, the ongoing development of that individual as a person, as their own self-identity continues to develop. If you've got that safety net all the time, then are you really risking anything?
Absolutely. You're right. You're right. The bigger problem is this: when mom and dad die,
So
you have
tell me
nowhere to
about that.
go.
Nowhere to go.
No, when your mom and dad die, you have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
You're done.
Because
And
the
so
safety net's always been there.
you have created, because of that, there's always a place to go.
Yeah.
You have set it up to one day there will be no place to go.
Yeah.
And that's horrible. Yeah.
I think it's really stripping the individual of their opportunity to truly become independent.
Absolutely.
So talking about independence, you had an interesting way that you got into university. I've heard you tell a story about you going into uni, and you started in 2004, November of 2004, but that wasn't I'm going to go and finish my degree, I have a goal that I'm going to achieve. This shift for you going to uni came off the back of a conversation with a senior officer in the Navy that started off as a compliment.
Yes. So Chief Buck Camfield, he is in my book. I still talk to him to this day. He is the greatest person I know outside of my family. He really is. So one day I'm a recruiter. I just got recruiter of the year. Okay. And I was like sitting on cloud nine. And Chief Camfield is about ready to retire. And he was going to get a job for the Department of Homeland Security. Okay. And he goes, Petty Officer Goggins. I'm like, yes, Chief. He goes, you are probably one of the best sailors, most motivated sailors I've ever known in my entire life. I was like, thanks, Chief. I appreciate it. He goes, I was like feeling good, right? He goes, if your resume came across my desk because he was getting a job. He was going to be a supervisor. He goes, if your resume comes across my desk, I guarantee you I'm throwing it in the trash. I'm not hiring you. I was stunned. I was like, why, Chief? He goes, because you had an opportunity to get a free college degree from the United States military. They're going to pay for the whole thing, and you're not taking it. He goes, that is, to me, that shows them you're the most unmotivated person that I know.
Mm.
And he's like, now let's go get some lunch. I was like, you know what? F off, man. I don't want to eat with you, but I did anyway because he's cheap and he paid for it. But I was mad the whole time. The very next day, the very next day, I enrolled. The very next day, I enrolled in Marion University in their adult. It was called adult. It was called MAP, Marion Adult Program, and it was a college at night that you go to. I started there. I went. I got my 4-year degree in 2.5 years. I got my master's degree. So I went from '04, no degree at all. '07, I had a master's degree. Okay. And in 20, no, I'm sorry, excuse me. I'm sorry. It was '09, I had my master's degree. And in 2016, I had my doctorate. And in 2016, when I got my doctorate, I did not even call my mother first. They said, congratulations, Dr. Goggins. And the first person I contacted was Chief Buck Canfield. And what I said to him is, I said, Chief, I said, I got my doctorate. I said, but I want to tell you something. He goes, what? I said, if your resume came across my desk, I wouldn't hire you. He goes, why? I said, because you had an opportunity to get your doctorate paid for and you didn't take it. He laughed.
So you one-upped him.
I did. But you know what? To be honest with you, that statement, my kids are now in college, some of them. That statement got me to the point to where now, if you look in the back, you've got all those books.
Yeah.
That statement got me to the point to where when my daughter did pass away, I was in the financial state where I could take care of her son, my grandson, and he lives with me to this day. And um, I owe a lot of my success to Chief Buck Canfield, and I owe a lot of that success to him pissing me off and telling me that he wouldn't hire me. But it was the fuel that sparked a brand new career for me.
What do you think it was? Do you think, what do you think he tapped into that sparked that fuel for you?
He tapped into that there is a chance, and the Goggins family, both me and my brother, we don't like to have anything that could create failure.
Mm.
And that was what he said to me, was that I wasn't living up to my fullest capacity. I wasn't living up to my fullest potential, and that I was leaving something on the table. And it did. It scared me a little bit. And so I wanted to make sure that I didn't, I don't leave anything on the table. If I see an opportunity, I do take it.
Which, really coming full circle to what we were talking about earlier, is the solution to a problem that we currently have. Things like the cards to say stop when a senior officer is saying something to you that you deem to be too much, versus the reduction of the requirements to get into the service. Even here in Australia, the requirements to get into the army are ridiculously low. I looked at some of the physical requirements and thought, oh, wow, my 13-year-old son can do that. Yet we've got these people that are going into a life of service, which is what we refer to in the Jackson family as a low bar. So in my family, we have this little protocol that we utilize, which is called the bar. And sometimes my son will come up and say, I did this. And we'll look at him and go, okay. And then he'll say, yeah, but it's a low bar. And the low bar basically means I should have done it anyway. This should be 101, non-negotiable, foundational. I don't need to be out asking for someone to give me a pat on the head for having done this, because as part of my responsibilities as a human being, I just do it.
Right.
So in our family, we utilize the low bar. And I wonder if in society, the bar has gotten so low with things like participation awards and cards that we give senior officers because they're pushing us too hard, that perhaps what we need to do is have people that are willing to raise the bar constantly and then make that the new standard of acceptance. And instead of lowering the bar so people can feel better about getting in, doing exactly what the chief did to you and giving everyone a metaphorical Goggins. What on earth are you doing with your life? Are you serious? And then providing support for these people where they've got no mum and dad to fall back on, but instead are forced to then go and step up.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny that you bring that up. And I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago about, you know, working out. And he was like, hey, I'm going to take these two 20-pound dumbbells and I'm going to do as many reps as possible. I'm like, you'll probably do a ton of reps with that. He goes, yeah. I said, but the thing is your first rep is going to look just like your 100th rep. He's like, yeah. I said, that means you have done nothing. I said, so I'm going to go take these two 60-pound dumbbells and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to push out probably 25 of them. But I can guarantee you, after I do my 60-pound dumbbells and I push them out, you know, I was going to do the incline bench press. I said, that first one is going to look great. That last one that I do at like maybe 20, 25, 26, it's going to look awful. It's going to probably take me as much time to do that last rep as it took me to do 15 of them. I said, but you know what? The funny thing is even though I'm going to look ugly doing that last rep, I know that when I got done, that I succeeded and I achieved something. You know, and when you talk about low bars, that's the thing. We would rather say that I did, you know, 100 reps on a dumbbell as opposed to saying I did 25 reps, but I did them as the best I could.
Mm.
Because that's the problem. And I love how your son talks about low bar. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we refer to as vanity metrics, right? Everyone wants to be
Absolutely.
seen doing the thing. It's I can lift this amazing amount and look how many I can lift. Well, that's great, but you know, no offense, but that's a pretty low bar.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. And I think that what we need to be reminded of is what you've just tapped into brilliantly, which is we have potential that we are wasting because we'd rather be seen doing something that we think will give us attention, as opposed to be seen doing something which is a little bit dirty, a little bit messy, and then growing from there. It's not necessarily about growth. It's shifted to being more about being seen.
Absolutely. You're right.
Yeah. So your PhD, you wrote a dissertation. And I found the topic of this absolutely fascinating. Understanding strategic planning, why nonprofit organizations struggle in the current era of privatization. And one of the things that you wrote in your dissertation is the message of a nonprofit must think and operate like a for-profit business with values, but also with a plan. Now, that's
Yes.
fundamentally the baseline of all of your business model with regards to your books, with regards to your podcast. Everything is about a nonprofit operating as a for-profit business. Why do you think that a nonprofit wouldn't make that connection, that because we're a nonprofit organization, we don't need some of the structural fundamentals of a company operation?
Nonprofits think about nonprofits don't think, they feel.
Hmm.
There's a big difference. Um, I feel that, you know, I feel that the Buffalo Bills are the best football team in the NFL. Okay. Do I have anything to back that up? No. I want you to feel the same way. Okay. There's nothing behind it. So when you are nonprofits, you know, they're dealing with, you know, we're going to help animals. We're going to feed animals. Everybody, we all feel that animals need to eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all feel that way. But we also feel that we should have money for Alzheimer's patients. And we also feel that we should have housing for veterans. And we also feel all these things. So what happens is now in nonprofits are trying to tug at your feelings. Okay. But the problem is I don't care how much you feel, my wallet only feels this much. Okay. And once it's gone, it's gone. So these nonprofits have to realize that they are competing for a dollar just the same way as, Hungry Jack and McDonald's are competing for a dollar. It's still a burger, but now we're still competing for that dollar, even though and I'm going to tell you, the first time I ever had a toasty was at Hungry Jack's in Burger in Sydney.
Yeah.
Love them. Okay, absolutely love them. But on the same note, you have to, people have to realize that you are competing. There is going to be a competition. So nonprofits have to think that, okay, we have to have a plan. I have to also make sure that if I'm giving to this nonprofit, it's going the right way. It's doing the right things. It's going to the right thing. Just like the same way as if I went to go get my car serviced. If I wanted to get my Nissan serviced, I may like the person, but if they're not going to take care of my car the right way, then I'm not going to go to that person anymore. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to give somebody else my dollar to get my service done right. And that's what I try to talk about it in when it comes to nonprofits. Nonprofits have to think like a business, and they have to think that even though tax wise they're not making a profit, they still have to make money,
I
or they're
like
not going to take care of their people. They're not if you don't have money, you're not going to take care of your people.
Exactly. I see a lot of people these days that have what we call money issues, and you'll see coaches and all sorts of spiritual people talking about money coding and wealth coding and how to go about becoming better at managing money. But I find that one of the things that's categorically missing in the not-for-profit is the respect for what money can provide. And it's often looked at as a source of evil almost.
Yes.
I remember
Yes.
when I was coaching with Jay Shetty quite some time ago, I had this monumental moment in relation to money. And he said quite simply, if you want impact, you have to have money. Full stop. That's it. And you need to accept the fact that money is a conduit to open doors. So if you don't want to have doors opening quicker, then don't take the money earning option. And I started to think about it, and I talked to a lot of people about this, is money is a quantum leap to achieving. Because once you have money, it puts you in different circles. Now, you will also get in different circles through influence. And as you and I have found each other just through friends of friends that we have commonalities with. But money
Right.
is a different currency that gets you to places where friends won't necessarily get you as quickly. And it opens doors in a different way.
Absolutely. You're right.
Which
You
brings me
are
to the
absolutely
next
right.
question about
Mhm.
your podcast. So
Mhm.
I've been fortunate enough to be a guest on the 4Ps a little while ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation we had. You started the podcast back in August 2023. And if I did my calculations right, you're somewhere around the 100 episodes.
Like that. Yeah. 102, something like that. 103,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Well, first of all, congratulations. Most podcasts
Thank you.
don't get anywhere near 100 episodes, and most podcast hosts find it way too hard, way before even hitting the 50, let alone the 100. So that in itself is a huge achievement. But what you've done is you've focused the podcast on the 4Ps of personal development: purpose, passion, planning, and persistence. Now, for someone like me, I'd look at that and I go, yeah, of course, that's a no-brainer. 4Ps, they're necessary for you to have the best life. Absolutely. It makes perfect sense to me. What about someone that would look at those 4Ps and go, yeah, but I don't have any of those? Does that mean I'm a failure?
No, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means that you need to start living your life intentionally. And once you start doing that, I even talk in my book, The Four Ps, about you've seen the movie Forrest Gump, right?
Yeah.
The very beginning of the movie. I mean, it's a great movie. I love the movie. It starts out with that feather that's just floating randomly, and the wind is blowing it every which way, and the feather seemed to get lucky and fall right by the feet of Forrest Gump, and he puts it in a book and keeps it comfy until the book is opened again by his son, and then the feather floats away again, and we have no idea what happens to the feather. And then there's a couple things in the book that says, life is like a box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get. Well, that's bullshit, because you know what? I'm going to tell you, I can buy a box of turtles right now. I know exactly what I'm getting in that box of turtles. I'm spending a little bit more, but I can buy a box of turtles. I'm getting pecan, caramel, and chocolate. That's what I'm getting. And every single piece of chocolate that I get out of there is not going to surprise me because I want pecan, caramel, and chocolate. That's what I want. Okay. I don't want to grab a piece of chocolate. You've gotten a box of chocolates before, right? And you know, you're starting to you grab one piece and you grab another. It's like, oh my God, that is horrible. And you put it away, but you've already eaten that piece of chocolate, right? You just don't like
Yeah.
it. So what I talk about in that book is make sure your choices. If you live if you live intentionally the way you want to live, you're going to find your purpose. You're going to have a plan to get in and reach your full purpose. But if it's your purpose, you're going to be passionate about it. You're going to get up every single morning. You're going to get up every morning. Can't wait to do your stuff. You know, I mean, just yesterday I drove 14 hours to get back home from New York City, and I could not wait to get on this podcast with you. I look forward to sending out this message. I look forward to talking. I got up this morning. I went to work, started working on emails and this, that, and the other, and I didn't even feel like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. No, because this is my purpose. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm doing it intentionally. And then persistence. When it comes to persistence, you know, there's going to be some bad things that are going to happen to you. You know, there's going to be obstacles. There's going to be people that are going to try to prevent you from getting to where you want to go. There's going to be circumstances that prevent you from wanting to go. The reason why my book did not come out until 2024 is because we had this little thing called COVID, slowed everything down. And I knew that the way I wanted this business model to look, the book can't be released until after this is all, until we get this all straightened out, because I mean, this is a global thing and I can't do it from a computer monitor all the time. So, you know, I just had to sit back and be patient until that happened, you know, and that's why there's the four P's. But yes, you can get them. But the first thing is you have to sit there and look yourself in the mirror and say, what do you want? And once you answer that honestly and completely, then this book is something that you need.
And if you were to think about purpose as a whole in relation to your life, can you pinpoint the moment when you found yours?
I found my purpose the moment about 30 years ago. I mean, I was living like that feather, you know, and even though, you know, when 30 years, it'll be 30 years this coming December 30, 24th, when I held my firstborn son in my hand, in my arms, and I looked at him and I'm like, whoa, you got to get it together.
Mm.
And when that happened, that's when purpose started to happen. That's when the true what I wanted to be came about. And it developed. I mean, it made some turns along the way, but it started developing right then.
But becoming a father gave you purpose.
Becoming a father gave me purpose. It gave me a real purpose because, you know, it's funny that our lives are more than just us. You know, Uncommon, what you're doing with Uncommon right now, Joe, that goes far beyond Joe Jackson.
Absolutely.
And it might, and I'm going to say, because of the concepts and because of the theories, it may go far beyond your lifetime. I really do believe that there are going to be people talking about, hey, there's a lady named Joe Jackson and talks about Uncommon and how to be a man, and that's the reason why I'm doing this. And this is like 2093 or something like that. And somebody's saying that, you
Yeah.
know, and so yes, and once you realize that your purpose and your peace can live beyond you, that's when you found your true purpose, when it keeps on going. You know,
Legacy.
we're sitting there talking about my father died 12 years ago, and
Mm.
we're still talking about him. I talk about my grandfathers because of their purpose, and one of my grandfathers died in 1985. That was
Wow.
40 years ago, and we still talk about him
Yeah.
because
Interesting.
his purpose carried over. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. And to talk about the purpose that you have demonstrated, leaving a legacy that lasts for generations long after you're gone. I think about the book of Ecclesiastes, where the question is asked, what's it all for? It's all a chasing after the wind. What's it all for? The temples will get torn down. The money I can't take with me. The women, the wine, the song, the life. What's it all for? Because at the end of the day, we're all going to end up in the same place, which is dead.
Right.
So what's the point? Does it really matter if I live my life for me or for others? And the one message that I find comes out constantly with the people that I interview on this podcast is Uncommon is about recognizing first and foremost that you have a gift of life, and the primary function of your life is to serve in one way, shape, or another. You're here to give. And in order to give to your best capacity, you need to invest in yourself to be the best that you can be.
Absolutely.
So your books, you've launched them. You've had lots of stuff happening in your books lately, and you're an advocate for telling people stories through what's called anthologies and contributions. How do you identify who gets involved in your books?
You know, I have to go out and find a lot of people like you, Joe, and that's very hard. Okay. And what I mean by that, I have to find a lot of people who have had really bad things happen to them. All right. Number one, who have been able to take a struggle or an obstacle and leverage it to their advantage. Number two. And the hardest part is having someone willing to share that story with the entire world. And those are what these anthologies are about. But these anthologies, all of them are there to help people. When you read these anthologies, you know that there's a story in all of my anthologies for everyone. And that's what it's for.
I
And
do
like I said, it is,
notice.
pardon me?
Sorry, keep going.
Okay. And that is one thing that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure that people, when they read these, they know there's something in there for everyone. And it's there to help them go through a very dark time. The next, like I said, the next book I have coming out is a book dealing with addiction. And that affects, I don't care who you are, I don't care how successful you are, it affects every person on this planet. Addiction affects every person on this planet. I write a story. This in the book. I'm finishing up my chapter right now, but I start the story out with John Adams. John Adams was the second president of the United States.
Mhm.
When he was vice president of the United States, his son was living in New York City, and he took a carriage up to New York City. I think he was already in New York City because at one point the capital of the United States was in New York City. And he went to find his son that was in the flop houses of New York. This is back in the 1700s, the late 1700s. And he went to these flop houses to find his son. This is the vice president of the United States. The very first vice president of the United States is trying to find his son who is high in a flop house. He goes to see his son that's high in a flop house. The reason why he goes to see his son high in a flop house is because his son's wife and children had to go live with John Adams because their
That's
father
alcohol.
is an addict. So John Adams goes and talks to his son and says, "Hey, listen, you need to straighten up and this, that, and the other." And the son rejected John Adams. John Adams was kicked out. Remember, the vice president of
Vice
the
president.
United States of America. He was kicked out of the flop house by his drunk son, and the drunk son says, "I do not ever want to see you again." And you know what? He never saw him again. And the next thing he heard about his son was his son died of alcohol poisoning. All right, or what would be known today as alcohol poisoning.
Yeah.
He ended up having, because of his son's addiction, he ended up having to raise his grandchildren, and his daughter-in-law had to stay with him until he died, and when he was 90 years old. So this is, addiction there's no protection from it. So this book is actually about helping people, and also it's always a story of hope. Everybody that wrote in this book they've either been affected through addiction as someone who watched a loved one go through it, or they were the addicts themselves that have recovered. And again, we're working with one organization out of Australia and several here in the United States, to where the proceeds will go help with rehab, addiction, and job placements and things like that.
It's a great initiative, Trunnis. I've
Thank
spent quite a significant amount of time myself at Narcotics Anonymous meetings, being there with people that I know that they've needed support to get there. And one of the first things I recognized is how many functioning addicts we have in our society right now. People who on the outside look perfectly reasonable, but are hiding a secret that's so huge it's destroying them in the background. There was some study done on addiction, and it suggests that one of the reasons why addiction is so destructive is it's because the addict has actually suffered from a lack of connection in their lives. Do you have an opinion on that?
I don't know. I don't really. It does make a lot of sense that that could be the case. I also think it could be just I don't know. I don't. I mean, that's a very good question that you ask, and I know that in my family we've had our addictions go every other generation.
Mm.
It really does. My grandfather was not. His father was. My dad was. I am not. I'll drink a beer. You know, that's the only thing I drink is beer. But you know, I made it a vow that my kids would never see me intoxicated. And I've held that. I'm 54 years old and I will go, you know, maybe my last day on earth, I might just go ahead and say, hey, just for, you know, just so you could say you saw dad drunk, here you go. But joking. But yeah, but then you know we've experienced it in you know in the next generation with my kids, you know, which they are now clean, thank you. But yeah, it does. I don't know where that comes from. And the thing is, when you say lack of connection, that's what I was kind of thinking, because you know the person that in our family, we are a very connected, very close family.
Mm.
um but you know, I don't know, there was decisions made, and those decisions led to, you know, one, you know, like I said, one thing leads to another, and there you go.
I
But
guess
that
you
is a good, I want to read about that.
Yeah, I'll get you the link to it. It's really, really interesting. There are quite a few people that advocate for the neurological benefits that are not being received with regards to connection for these particular individuals. And as a result of it, they look for a replication of the neurological effects through the drugs with the release of the dopamine or of the cortisol or whatever they need at the time based on their choice of drug. So I'll get that through to you.
Yeah, please. Mhm.
Which brings me beautifully into our final topic that we're going to talk about today. And I just want to, first of all, just say thank you very much for being so just forthcoming with everything today, because I know we've gone way over time.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
But you've made some obvious health choices throughout the course of your life. And it's no more demonstrated than the one that you just said there. My children will never see me drunk. And when you and I met earlier on this year, we were initially, I don't know if you know this, but I had initially planned for you and I and your partner to meet up in a cafe. We were going to grab something to eat. It was a really nice cafe that I had chosen for the day. And we were probably going to grab a couple of drinks and whatever else. I'm a non-drinker, so I probably would have grabbed something non-alcoholic, but I do like to make sure that people around me are not uncomfortable that drink. So people do what they do. But instead, I made a last minute decision to invite you to a CrossFit competition where I had friends of mine competing that day. And I thought, you know what, let's do something completely different. Let's not do the run of the mill, sit across a table, have a chat. Let's do something that's unusual. So to your credit, You were flexible and you said, sure, let's go. I have no idea what this thing is. I want to check it out just for the sake of it. You've come all the way from the other side of the world, from the US to Australia, and you've found yourself flat bang in the middle of turf games. And I have never
That
seen a man as excited, well, not never, but rarely see a man as excited as you were that day. So tell me about what was going through your head when you're watching all of these athletes compete.
I am literally watching people that have regular 9 to 5 jobs, you know, taking their bodies to the ultimate limit. I watched them. The first event was the row bike and then the run, the 200-meter run. It was the cardio.
Yeah.
And I was watching them. And there was no break. They were just going and going. And then when it was all over, they just like passed out.
Mm.
And so I remember asking you, so it's over now. She goes, no, they get like a 9 minute break and then they go over there. And I'm looking over there and I'm like, what in the hell are they doing over there? Well, these guys are doing deadlifts and they're doing
Cleans and
thank
overheads.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, overheads. And I'm like, what? And they're doing it to the point where every single time they do it, they add more weight, add more weight. And I was just amazed. One of the kids that were there, and I say kid, he's a great young man, 16 years old. And great kid. His parents were fantastic people. And the other thing I saw in CrossFit is something that I see in a lot of team sports, even though it's based on your individual ability. It was the rooting, it was the cheering on, it was the teamwork, it was the I'm here to help you. If you can't make, let's get this done. It was the pushing you to finish this event. And I was totally impressed. Number one, with the, could I do that? And the more I was sitting there watching, it's like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this or not. And I remember my very first CrossFit training that I did here. I was like, can I? And now it's like this is just as I could never not do it. And so and I just fell in love with it. And then you said, would you come back? I said, I'm coming back next year to do this because it was just like I was totally impressed. Whenever I go to CrossFit, I bought a shirt while I was at turf games. I don't say whenever I go, but at least once a week I wear that shirt, and I'm like, hey, yeah, this is the stuff, and I, you got to do this, and so it's a lot of fun, and I watch videos on it constantly, just to say, you know what, I'm not doing my deadlifts right. I'm not doing those right, or I'm not doing this right. How am I going to get my form right? The pull-ups. I've had shoulder surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, how am I going to strengthen my shoulders so I can max out on? I mean, so I absolutely appreciate it. Matter of fact, I appreciate it so much that I actually wrote it in my book about CrossFit, about trying something new. And so yes, absolutely, it's great.
I love it. And of course, we've converted you now. You love CrossFit so much that you've decided to come back next year and compete. And you and I are going to be competing in Turf Games 2026. And I'll be 50 by then. So we're going to have an over 50s team.
Absolutely. It'd be 50. I'll be 55.
So I'm
So
looking
yeah.
forward to that immensely. But you've doubled down on that and you've decided to do something else while you're here in Australia. So the CrossFit comp's not enough for you. You've teamed up with a mutual friend of ours.
Yes, we are going to ride our bike to raise money for stroke victims in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
One of his father passed away from a stroke. My grandmother passed away from a stroke. Um, and strokes are they're horrible. Um, and even if you don't die immediately from a stroke, it's just horrible. And so we're going to ride our bike from Sydney to Perth. What I love about it is the fact that, and I've looked on the map a number of times. There's a lot of nothingness between Sydney and Perth.
Big amount of desert.
I mean, in the United States, we have like New York, then you drive, you get Cleveland, then you got Indianapolis, then you have Chicago. That's a big city in the middle. You got a lot of stuff in the middle. In Australia, you have Sydney, Perth,
Mm-hmm.
and everything in between is like good luck. I mean, but I am actually absolutely looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the bike ride. We're not going to ride super hard. I think that we're going to get it done in probably 19 days. I think we
Mhm.
can probably get it done in a little less than that, but we don't know. We're going to ride until we're tired. Um, and I'm going to have a blast doing it. I can't wait.
I love that. I'm definitely looking forward to supporting you and Phil during that time. So I'm just going to say thank you very much for your time today. It's been absolutely brilliant to be able to talk to you on this level. I know I have the privilege of chatting to you whenever I like, and I definitely don't take that for granted. But to dig a little bit deeper into key topics has just been so genuinely refreshing to just chat and share what was on your mind and just take the conversation wherever it led us today. If anybody wants to follow you, and my gosh, please, guys, seriously, take the time to follow Trunnis, because he is the epitome of, I have had multiple times in my life where I could have chosen to be the victim, where I could have chosen to be angry, where I could have chosen to be resentful, spiteful, all of the things that hold a man down so he can't be his best. Trunnis has gone through the growth and intentionality to choose a different perspective when he had every reason to become a victim and nobody would have questioned it. So if there's ever anyone that's worth listening to, following, absorbing what he talks about, then Trunnis is definitely up in the top of the list for me, and I highly recommend him. But Trunnis, tell me about how people can get in touch with you, follow you, learn from you.
You can come to my YouTube channel. I do have it's 4Ps of you at Trunnis. It's 4Ps of you, Trunnis Goggins. You can reach me at the 4Ps of you podcast site. You can reach me on Facebook under Trunnis Goggins II, Instagram under Trunnis Goggins II, or author Trunnis Goggins II. And you can follow me on the Stories of Author series on both Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. And if you had one piece of advice for anyone who's watching this podcast or has watched any of the episodes of this podcast and has the thought process of, well, it's all well and good for those guys to be uncommon, it's easier for them, what advice would you have for them?
It's if you know what, I'm not going to try to say this to belittle anybody on the podcast, but if we can do it, you can too. You can. If you do not ever find, here's the thing, regardless of what you're going to do, you're going to have pain.
Mm.
If you decide to do, you can either have the pain that you choose or you can have the pain that life chooses. And I'm going to tell you, life's pain that they're going to choose for you is going to be a hell of a lot more painful than the pain that you choose for yourself. So keep on moving forward and do it, do it. Just do it.
Love it. Thanks so much, Trunnis. Wise words from a man who's been through a hell of a lot, and I am very, very privileged to call a friend. Thank you so much again for your time today, and I look forward to continuing to watch your journey both in your books, your podcast, at Turf Games next year, and raising money for stroke victims.
Thank you.